I'd like to see some sidewalks in that plan or for the plan itself. And then I'd like to see, I'm not sure who would be responsible, but I'd like to see the Good Hill have sidewalks going all the way up. And I don't know how we could require that.
Thank you. Rich?
Yep. So a lot of my concerns were mentioned as well. I think, like John, and I haven't been on the commission for that long, but in the time I have, I think we've all had the same sense of, where affordable housing makes sense for that community, right? And it's close to public transportation. It's close to a downtown, and this is just like, it's I think it's actually as far as humanly possible that you could get from any of those things at the moment, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. So that coupled with it, some of the other traffic related and sidewalk issues that we've been talking about, that's my big concern, to be honest with you. Is it just doesn't make sense.
Okay, thank you. I have to agree with everybody what they're saying, but something was pulled out of the town of Bethel, the plan of conservation and development, and it's provide housing opportunities for Bethel's changing demographics. And I just wanted to remind everybody that it was to support a range of housing densities with higher density housing concentrated in the village center and lower densities in rural neighborhoods. And how do we get there? We provide a diverse mix of housing types in town, including large lot family developments, single family developments, small lot single family developments, duplexes, triplexes, townhomes, and apartments. Maintain large lot zoning R80s in southern and eastern Bethel, particularly areas with the public water supply, watershed, or aquifer protection areas. And then talks about provide housing opportunities for all ages, incomes, and household types, which is encourage multifamily housing in areas with sufficient water, sewer, and access to transit and services, and support the development of smaller scale multifamily projects with 10 or fewer units. Just to remind everybody, when we pulled our POCD together, we did discuss affordable housing, and I just wanted to bring it to the forefront again. So at this point, moving forward, do we have any other comments that people would like to bring?
I would, Pat.
Yes, John.
So it's important, that statement that you just read, the reason why that we mentioned that affordable housing needs to be where town services are is because it needs to be easy for people to utilize them. If you put a development on Good Hill, people that live in the affordable units might not have a car. That's the reason why they're buying into it. We always said affordable units needed to be next to town services, near the bus route, near the train station, near the grocery store, so they could have access to all these things. That's the country as far as I'm concerned. It's nowhere near town services.
Thank you,
I totally agree with you, John, because walking to Bethel Food from there could be hazardous to your health.
Oh yeah.
I mean, just going to a park, there's no connection anywhere near that, and so that it is, as you say, it's so far removed from the center of town that it doesn't really make any sense.
And Kenny, you mentioned sidewalks. I am in favor of every sidewalk you could put in, but you can't give them the illusion that it's a walkable street. Mm-hmm. Some streets in Bethel are country roads, and we don't want to promote pedestrian traffic. It's really scary if you got them down Good Hill and got them to an intersection, and then they're on their own down Taylor.
If they connected,
sidewalks have to start from the center and work their way out, so there's always a path to get downtown.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Pat, I have something more to say.
Yes, Bob.
I think orderly development is key to the town's health. We have, as indicated, done many things to promote affordable housing while maintaining orderly and safe growth within the town. We have a commission that spent many hours writing and adopting regulations that aim at orderly and health and well-being in the town. Many taxpayer dollars have been spent writing these regulations and maintaining them. and also the plan of conservation and development, we worked into that affordable housing. We worked into the TOD affordable housing. I think this affordable housing project does not meet the spirit of the 830G regs. Because in the 830G regs, it says, you know, health and safety, but it also says you can't have units that are distinguishable from the normal units in that area.
That's
And I
that's a
think
good point.
we have to say that this project would be totally, it would be distinguished, that it stood out more so than it ever should. And again, the safety and of the people that are going to live there, and the safety of the people that live there already is paramount to our approval or disapproval of this thing. And we have to think that through. Is this going to be a safe place for people to live? And on top of that, I didn't see any kind of a concrete plan to get water up the hill.
Not yet.
And I think we you know, that should have been presented to us at some point. A concrete plan to get that water up the hill, up to that point. It says it's coming, but
Can I, or Pat, yeah.
it says it's coming, but we don't have a concrete plan in effect right now for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. I'm sorry, John, did you say something?
Yeah, I want to piggyback on what Bob said, the character of the neighborhood. It seems like row housing is just being dropped into the neighborhood. You know, let's be real. There's a parcel that's empty next to sewer and they possibly could get water. It's going to be developed. My concern is the site plan with row housing. I wish that the applicant had come in with something different that looked a little more in character with the neighborhood and still was able to develop it. You know, I understand the developer needs to come in with a project that works for him, but it still needs to consider the character of the neighborhood. And it just doesn't look like the character of the neighborhood. Part of the affordable housing is for not to look different than the community. So it didn't look like they were affordable row housing. And to me, it just doesn't fit to what the neighborhood looks like. The neighborhood is full of single family homes. And I know that the affordable housing is more density, but somehow it could look a little different, or should have looked different than these row houses.
It could have blended a lot better.
Thank you, John. Any other comments?
Well, I think we pretty much touched.
All right.
No, I have one more, since I just
Okay,
want to
Tom.
give everybody time, okay?
Please.
This same applicant has come in with affordable housing projects downtown, and we've approved them without any hiccups because they were so close to the TOD. And that just says that the commission really takes affordable housing serious. And as long as a reasonable project next to town services, that the commission is willing to think outside of the box for the better of the community and to make sure that we're part of affordable.
Thank you,
Oh,
John.
you're right, John. We have quite a few in our TOD zone now. We have quite a few affordable housing projects that have been built up in the last 5 or 6 years. And I think that is what we were hoping for. And with our TOD, that was really was one of the major points of it, to have more affordable housing in that area, to give people more of access to town.
Right, but we've also approved them right outside the TOD.
Right.
And the commission has felt strongly that the need for affordable housing outweighed a lot of things that we struggle with, but it was close to the railroad, the bus route,
Right.
a walkability. You know, it was a lot better than this current proposed.
This current proposal is way out in left field. So.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you. All right. Based on everything that I've heard, it appears we're going in the direction of a denial.
Mhm.
So I would like to ask by a show of hands, Do we have a consensus to deny this application?
I don't have your hand, but you can hear my voice. Yes, Kitty.
Yeah.
Is all the conversation over already on
Pretty
this,
much,
on this
yeah.
one?
I think
On
we
this
pretty
one,
much
yeah.
touch on every subject, John.
Can I ask the zoning official to explain, what if we were to deny this and then the applicant had a different, something different that they proposed? You know, is there any other options? Or do we deny
What's the next step?
today and we go to court tomorrow? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Bob.
What the next step is, you want to know?
Right. If
Yeah.
we deny today, what are the options for the commission and the applicant before we all sit in the courthouse?
Chuck,
This
do
is
you
a-
want to take that or do you want me to take it?
Do you want to start and I'll pitch in?
Okay.
Or-
As you guys know, when you review the history, the affordable housing history in the town, the applicant can do one of two things, in my opinion. The applicant could take some of your comments, because basically what I'm hearing you say is that it needs to be better in line with regulations that you have in place pertaining to affordable housing, that there should be some compromise going on with the proposed what the applicant wants to do there. One of the things that you may want to take as a possible consideration, for example, in the record, there's a letter from one of the residents on Good Hill. And it just, when you said, you know, what can we do, compromise? Well, in regards to that, there was a compromise possibly proposed, and I'm just throwing that out there for part of your discussion. And they talked about using the renderings that were proposed originally for Shelley Road. They're exact duplicates of what was proposed on Knollwood and Reservoir Street on the corner there under the Oven Rock settlement. And I just have this here where it says it's better suited for 2 or 3 aesthetically pleasing duplexes on the property, allowing 4 to 6 families the opportunity to raise children with a yard to play in within a great neighborhood in our town. Now, this is one of the neighbors that are directly involved with this particular application. You know, advocating for partnership, advocating for something to be inclusive in this area of town, not exclusive, to make it part of the neighborhood.
Inclusive, but still given it with the density. Absolutely. So it's a compromise. Yep.
There have been other instances in denials that you've done in the past where you've varied the amount of affordables that are allowed within the development. But again, this is all what if. But I do think that I got to let Laura, and excuse me,
I'll admit her, okay.
okay. I do think that if this is the way you're going, I do think, I'm hoping that it does open up the door for further discussion
Conversation.
with the applicant, possibly. Chuck, I don't know.
And Chuck Anders, attorney for the commission. I think I'm supposed to say my name whenever I speak. Just a reminder, one of the issues, again, this is an 830G application. So what that means is that in the event of a denial, which we're talking about, or approval with conditions that the applicant doesn't like the conditions, then it's the commission's burden of proof to show that the decisions necessary to protect substantial public interests in health, safety, or other matters, which the commission can legally consider, that such public interests clearly outweigh the need for affordable housing, and that such public interests cannot be protected by reasonable changes to the affordable housing development. So that's what the burden of proof is. And when we adopt a resolution, I assume you're going to authorize draft a resolution, we're going to address those in the decision, because that's the burden of proof in the event of appeal. There is the opportunity under the 830G statute for the applicant to submit a modified application within the time for appeal, and that would stay the need for appeal. So in other words, whenever you don't have to publish a decision right away. You should publish a decision within 15 days. And then within another 15 days, the applicant would have the right to resubmit something else. And then you have 65 days to decide that application. And that would stay the need to file an appeal of the original one. So there is a modification opportunity for the applicant to submit modifications to a revised plan that you can look at, after having received this. So, just so we're clear, because Beth and I will be working on a draft resolution. One of the things we'll need to identify are the substantial public interest in health, safety, or other matters which the commission can legally consider. And I'm just going through my notes to listen to you speak. One of the concerns I heard was this is a single family zone, but there's no play areas on the site. I believe there are no decks on the units because that was an issue with wetlands. So there's like no outside space in the units themselves. And there's I think he did put a block of area, a fairly small area on one corner, which is,
Right.
it was pretty tiny, but I think that was all that was done. So what I'm understanding you to say that is insufficient, that for this type of housing, which is likely to have children and outside, there's simply no outdoor open space, play area, or anything else for this for the residential units that are proposed. So that was one element. Another safety, there was a concern. I gather there's a concern for pedestrian safety due to lack of sidewalks. Concern that insofar as walking is the area, unlike the town center, this is not in that area. It's not a particularly walkable area, so that there's a concern about that as well. And then there was the character of the neighborhood that I think John and others have mentioned, that dropping row houses right in a single family residential, and how you have existing planning documents that set forth what is the appropriate type of affordable housing in certain locations. So I just want to make sure I'm hearing everything that you say, so when we draft this resolution. So those are my comments, and then the findings would be that these are the substantial public health and safety issues, that they clearly outweigh the need for affordable housing that would be granted by this application, which again, it's 11 units, and so there's what, 3 or 4 affordable units? 4, is it, Beth? Or how many affordable units?
It would round up. It would probably be 4.
Okay, so we're talking about the benefits of 4 units and the cost, and then the substantial interest that you're looking, and whether those can be protected by reasonable changes. And it is always helpful, again, in these things, because we do have an obligation to work for affordable housing, to provide suggestions. And I've heard that there are some suggestions that have been made. I think, Beth, you pointed out the information in the record about analogous types that may be more appropriate. Again, I don't hear anyone saying, hey, simply because it exceeds the density in the zone, that's reason for denial. It's more than that, and it's not like I don't hear anyone saying that necessarily, something denser than what is allowed in the zone would be prohibited per se. Is what I'm hearing you say.
Chuck, I have a question.
Also, along the same lines with that, Chuck, I don't hear anyone saying anything negative as far as affordable housing is concerned, or affordable housing on this site itself. I think that's important too.
Chuck, I have a question.
Yes.
Is the overall design, it sounded like that's a legitimate reason for denial because we don't like the way it looks?
I think that would be a tough sell. In terms of what are the sort of public safety issues that have been found. I mean, there's, infrastructure issues, water, sewer. Sometimes when there is one case where open space was mentioned as an issue. So, but I'm not aware of the design just as a single reason that would,
No.
courts haven't found that to be by itself to be grounds for upholding a denial. But what I'm hearing you say is that there's a combination of reasons. It's not any one particular factor.
Beth, could you clear up what you said about the affordable? So my comments were, I believe in affordable, but I believe they should be where town services are, not here. Is that what you were saying? But you were leading to, what did you just say, Beth, about affordable housing on this application at this location?
Well, I was thinking of, again, one of the residents up there said compromise, and going back and looking at compromises that we've done in the past, thinking of what all of you have been saying to me individually, is that there may be opportunity to compromise. Again, if you take, you're talking about major expenses. We've already been through this once with 49 Taylor Avenue. The major expenses associated with bringing up water lines, things of that nature. I know it's, at least $150,000, $200,000 from discussions, previous discussions. If you eliminate that and you put in a couple of 2 families, you're eliminating a huge expense there. You're also eliminating the need. Remember, we're raising up the grade back there in order to get that humongous parking lot in there with the stormwater management system. Again, going back to what Kitty was saying, I'm thinking along those lines. If you create more green space, you're eliminating a lot of the other infrastructure that you need associated with that. The properties on Good Hill Road are serviced by sewer. They are not serviced by water. So you are talking about taking the concept of putting wells on that property, and we know we're all familiar with wells, but the feasibility of a well servicing at least 2 properties on there containing 2 dwelling units, at least. And that's just a thought, some ideas for alternatives, to not just come out with it. I mean, you're saying, to me, the consensus is you're saying no, but I think there's always opportunity for alternatives.
Absolutely.
If the applicant came back with a revised application in the appropriate time, the 15 plus the 15, does the commission have the ability to adjust the number of affordable on a project? So you said 4 right now. If we said, geez, that's a great plan, and part of this could be less affordable. Go ahead, Beth.
There have been, I can think of one instance, I don't know if it's in your affordable housing history plan, but on Maple Avenue, I believe it's 37 Maple Avenue.
33.
DeLuca?
Yeah.
Okay. In that instance there, you had an 830G that was approved, if you recall, with 7, I think it was 5 to 7. Again, it's going back and you're catching me off guard a little bit, John. 5 to 7, it was a condominium thing. Okay. It was out there and you saw it. In discussions with the property owner, after it was approved, you did approve it. We came up with what we did was in our discussions, we came up with, let's put 1 2-family in there. Let's make it look nice. Put apartment in the garage and convert the front house to 2-family.
Right.
And that's what you have going on today. It's almost at the point of getting CO. That's what I'm talking about. Is there an affordable unit in there that counts as points towards our goal? No. But is it more in tune, more in contiguous?
With character of the neighborhood, absolutely.
Within the neighborhood and getting some of the density that the particular property owner wanted? Yes.
Right.
Any resubmission would have to be an affordable housing application, though.
Correct.
30% of the units would have to be deed restricted as affordable.
But during
Say that again?
negotiations,
Yep.
you can alter that number.
I think he said if it stays.
We've done it. We'll talk about it, Chuck.
We'll talk about it.
Okay.
So I think Chuck's saying that it has to be a percentage, 30, 2 at 80 and 1 at 60. But Beth, I think you're saying that it could be adjusted. I remember that we adjusted them and gave back a little bit.
Yeah.
Beth, that's how you remember it as well.
Yeah, look, we did that.
Beth, I have another question.
Yes, Ken.
Concerning the bringing the water up, unless I read the plans wrong, I thought there's no wells at all and it's going to be city water going up there.
Right.
You
Right,
gotta get it there though.
They're bringing the water line up from Taylor Avenue, from 70 Taylor Avenue.
All right.
But I think what Kenny's referring to, Kenny, because of the density, you have to have city water. What Beth was referring to, if the units are reduced to a couple two-family dwellings, they could be serviced by a couple of wells on the property, not have to bring the water up.
Wouldn't the people who already live up there want the city water?
Nobody lives up there.
No, all the other
No.
neighbors.
Oh, he means for all of Good Hill.
All
He's
of
all a good hill, yeah.
I think I think I got a little too hypothetical, and I think we should go back and stick more with what you were
We were talking
originally
about.
discussing and finalizing as far as direction to Chuck and I.
So before we do a consensus vote, I just wanted to be clear that maybe the process is not denial, written, publicize it, and then write to court, right? I mean, that's all.
Right, there is the opportunity for a modified application that stays the period to take the appeal.
That would be totally up to Mr. Draper, and that is open to him.
Yes.
But I
The
think,
applicant, right.
yeah, but there's an uphill battle, but in the interest of trying to come to some sort of resolution, right? If we present it, I think that's done in good faith and would be the right move, right?
Yes.
Just a little clarity on bringing the water up. There's quite an expense in that, and it only comes up as far as that individual property to the edge of his property line.
Right.
And
Still 30 grand to hook it up to your own.
it doesn't necessarily connect the water to everybody's house on the way there.
Mm-hmm.
No, it doesn't.
That would be an expense for everybody.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else?
No, I think we're good.
All right, anything else before we take a consensus? Okay, I'll ask again. I'm looking for a consensus to deny this application. And I'll ask by a show of hands, those that are in favor of denying the application.
Yeah. Kitty Grant.
Thank you, Kitty.
So this is not a motion. This was just a
This is a
consensus vote
consensus.
for Chuck and Beth to start drafting a
Right.
resolution.
Right. Pat, could we just verbally state the names of the people that are agreeing to a consensus?
Yes, myself, Bob Legnard, Rich Tibbetts, Bob Legnard, yeah, Rich Tibbetts, Penny Kessler, John Lennon, Kitty Grant, and Ken, are you abstaining or?
I don't see a reason to deny it for health and safety reasons.
Okay, thank you. All right, Nancy, you have them all? Okay, perfect. All right, so the next is we need a motion to have Beth draft.
Beth and
So
Chuck.
it's not what we'd
No, we
like to
don't.
make
No,
it.
we don't need a motion. We have a consensus vote for Beth and Chuck to work on a draft. No motion until there's actually a motion.
Beth, do we need a motion to have you work
We
on it?
needed a motion.
No,
to-
you don't. I think.
Okay, all right then.
Consensus.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
Yep.
All right then, moving on. Shelley Woods LLC, Tim Draper, 9 units, Connecticut State Statute 8-30G, affordable housing, 47 Shelley Road. And what I would like to do, just to be sure commissioners, we all have the same understanding of things. I'd like to start the portion of the meeting by asking Todd Ritchie, who is our consulting engineer, to comment on his findings pertaining to the revised drawings submitted for the November 10th, 2020 meeting. Todd, did the changes improve the grades, the turning radius, safety, etc.?
Sure. If you'd like, I can share my screen.
Thank
I
you.
think I made you a co-host, Todd, so you should be able to share it without me doing anything.
All right, let me see. I'm not seeing it. Let's see. There we go. Sorry. Let me just.
Uh-oh.
Can you see anything?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let me see. Where am I? Move this out of the way. I'm only working off of one screen today, so.
There we go. That's it.
I see
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the right thing. I have a couple tabs open here. Let me see. Oops. Let's make sure these are the ones. Yes, these are the
Yes,
latest ones.
11.6,
Got it.
that's it.
Yep. Let me just get my screen situated. Sorry about that. I was getting organized before I got called on. All right, let me get up to the page or the sheet here, particularly dealing with that sharp curve that was revised. I think that's mainly what was revised. I mean, I know that there was also some fencing put on top of the retaining wall out of concern for pedestrians being close to a high wall. I think it was this one down here. But for this curve here, I was talking to Beth earlier. When I looked at this, and I can bring up the image on my screen. Let me just rotate it, sorry. This is getting in the way. 1 second. Of course, it doesn't want to let me do it. Technical difficulties. Hold on 1 second. Come on. Where'd you go? All right, there we go. Sorry about that. So I looked at the grades, and I'll kind of zoom in here. Even though the benefit, there is a benefit, you know, to creating a wider turn, particularly for the down slope vehicle. Before, as you know, this curb line was equidistant as this curb line off of that center line, this darker line around this 90-degree bend. And now this inside radius has been pulled in and broadened so that essentially you'll be able to get a smoother transition around this corner for a wider turning vehicle. However, when you look closely at the grades aren't getting better. In fact, they're getting worse on the inside corner. So if you look here, particularly this is about 35 to 40 feet of this inside corner is you have 2 feet over 9.5 feet, which is 21%, 2 feet over 6 feet, which is 33%. And I'm looking at, you look at where the grade line meets the curb right here, and where you see these color changes is where that occurs. And then you have 2 feet over 11 feet, which is 18%, and 2 feet over 8 feet, which is 25%. So when you also look at that, as well as Mr. Trinkus's drawings, as far as his vehicle tracking drawings, let me just see what, I'm on 6, so I can get back to here real quick. Let's just see what vehicle this is. This is a fire truck, but I'd rather actually just, I'll start off with the other vehicle, which is the garbage truck, which is the vehicle that's going to be there certainly frequently and weekly. So here's the garbage truck. And if we go up to this bend here, you can see this is the wheel this is where he has it going up, which is the arrows going up the driveway. And then he has the arrows coming down, which is the vehicle coming down the driveway. And this line right here, this one right here, is where the wheels are. So the wheels are in line, as you can see around this corner, with these grades right here. So, I mean, those grades are really steep. Whether that's consequential, again, I can't say, but I'd say that for a large vehicle that's traveling down 12%, going from 12%, which is already, advanced grade, to 21, 20, 33% downhill, it will affect stopping, and you're going around a 90-degree bend. I brought up multiple times that, there should be an analysis done. What is a safe stopping sight line? And that has to do with grades as well. How long it takes to stop on a certain grade. Of course, if it's steeper, it's going to take longer for a certain speed. In this case, you have a constant 12% grade already on this side of the driveway all the way around this curve. And now you have it even steeper on the inside, which is the downhill side, which gravity's helping with as somebody comes down the driveway. So as I think I brought up previously, if I recall correctly, the original grades that were along that original edge weren't as steep as this. They were, I think, in the range of like maybe 12 to above 12, but like up to 17%. And now we're getting in the realm of like almost in this case, doubling the slope. Just so you know, in comparison, I mean, this is 33%. 45% is 1-to-1. You can't even walk up 1-to-1 in soil. I mean, that's basically, if you dump out a pile of soil, that's what the soil wants to go to, 1-to-1. And this is 33. I mean, it's not 45, but just an order of magnitude, it's closer to 45 than it is to 12. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
And that's all alongside the stone path that they have built along where the truck would be coming down. That is the stone
Correct.
path that's right there, where people could
Correct.
be walking. Good.
Correct. And just also to kind of explain a little bit better, like I watched I wasn't at the last hearing, but I watched the video, and there was a lot of talk and kind of a little bit of, I don't know, this is like mixing and matching of different comments. I did have a comment about sight distance in the previous hearing because of the walls that are along the edge here as well. And the comment wasn't so much about being able to see a fire truck. I think that's the message that Mr. Trinkus was trying to bring across, that now that he's widened up this curve, that you can see a fire truck, and that makes everything better. But my comment about visibility was more towards being able to see for sight distance for a stopped vehicle that's around the bend, or just a child who decides to jump this walkway and drop something in the roadway, or something happens where you have to stop on this bend. Visibility is key, but slope is obviously key too. I mean, if this curve on the inside, ices up to any extent, I mean, on those slopes, you're probably going to keep going. And I've said before as well, you don't have the adequate, in my opinion, protections such as guide rail to stop a vehicle from going off the edge of the driveway and down into, in this case, off of a sort of an embankment into wetlands. This is just in this area, but further down, you can go over top of a wall. So putting the chain link fence on top of the wall to provide fall protection is a good measure, but it's not going to stop a vehicle from going over the wall. So again, somebody could say that, you know, well, would that ever happen? Well, we're also talking about a driveway that's 12% plus for over 800, 900 feet. There's no relief on this driveway where it flattens out, where you could say if you lost control, you're going to regain it. You could argue whether 12% is consequential or not. I mean, I guess the whole point is that 12% is definitely in the realm of being considered steepening, but it may not be as extreme as somebody's, like if somebody went out and looked at it and said, well, that doesn't seem that steep. Well, it's on, you know, the cusp of being steep in the steep category. And that's why typically driveways or roadways are limited to much less than that. Driveways, obviously, depending. I mean, so if you had a situation, you know, where there's pre-existing conditions or you have the safety measures in place, if there's safety, then there's less risk. You're going to have steeper scenarios or acknowledged risks if you have the safety features in place.
Thank you, Todd.
Sure.
Did you want to add anything about a turning radius, or do you feel you've covered everything?
I just wanted to maybe just so that everybody's clear on what's going on with, it's harder to read because these are black and white versus like color, which we had provided. But I mean, this is, as I mentioned, the garbage truck. As you can see, this garbage truck is not going to have an easy, this garbage truck even coming in the driveway is going to completely cross over. And there's been statements made, and you can look at it either way. You know, it's a driveway, it's a driveway, it's a driveway, even though the applicant themselves will call it a roadway and then correct themselves and call it a driveway. And then somebody like myself will call it a driveway and then say that, well, actually it's more like a roadway. So it kind of goes back and forth. Everybody acknowledges that you know, it's hard to deny that it's a road. You know, you're getting a road. It's not a driveway that's just kind of graded out of, like, you know, and not, you know, not really filled. It's just kind of like, you know, you smooth out the grades that are already there and you kind of put something down as a surface, and there's your driveway. I mean, this is certainly a cut and fill exercise that's going to go through here, creating this corridor for this driveway. So I just want to, you know, make sure people understand that, like, that when this, you know, like you know, as Steve Trinkus had mentioned, yeah, on a driveway scenario for like a single family house, are you concerned about say a trash truck, or, I mean, trash trucks usually don't go up your driveway, but in most cases nowadays, but say, you know, a fire truck, are you concerned of a fire truck that's going to go up your driveway and it's going to, you know, go smack in the middle of your driveway? No, you're not necessarily concerned about that. I think we can all acknowledge that if a fire truck has to go up here, they're going to do whatever they can to get up here to fight a fire. I think it's more, I mean, what's more concerning, as much as that should be a concern that the fire marshal is comfortable with the design of the driveway, what's more concerning is the everyday or weekly vehicles, large vehicles particularly, that are going up here. And it can be acknowledged that, I mean, even though this is a driveway that's serving, it's in a single family neighborhood, it's a multi-family driveway. So you can't just say that one family lives here and they know what's going on all the time and who's coming and going, and they anticipate it and they accommodate it. You know, you're going to have people coming and going from all of these different units, and they're not anticipating and you know, maybe not very good at accommodating the vehicles that are going to try to get up the driveway. So in that case, like for instance, the garbage truck's going to drive in here, and yeah, it's going to basically take up the whole driveway going up this driveway. I mean, you can already see how it tracks in the entrance here. It crosses over to the other side, and then to get around this bend, it has to go back almost like, and then it goes back to the other side again around this curve, and then comes up the driveway, you know, slightly over the line, comes around here. There's a wider turn, and then makes its way again up the driveway, kind of coming meandering back and forth to get up to the top, and then makes its way back down, like I said, similarly, and then around this curve with this wheel line that's on the steep section. So just to make that clear, so maybe people just have an understanding of, this is going to be a situation where there could be a scenario under certain conditions or certain, I don't know, like certain variabilities where somebody could be in a situation where they're startled that this garbage truck is coming up and they have to get out of the way. It's not just getting out of the way of a fire truck, which Mr. Trinkets had mentioned that is the law, which is true. But even at that, how do you get out of the way? As we had mentioned before, when basically you have curb all along each side of this. Are people supposed to drive over the curb with a sedan? Maybe their car isn't high enough to get over the curb. If they try to get over the curb, are they going to risk damage to their car? Are they going to be able to negotiate getting over a curb and back down from a curb without going off of the road? We were asking them to get off the road to go back on the road again. And I've never really actually seen a requirement or anybody promote emergency clearance from a roadway, telling people to evacuate the roadway onto the unpaved shoulder or over curbing. It's get out of the way, and the roadway is designed to have enough space for people to pull over up to the curb and be out of the way. I mean, some people exaggerate things, and if they have a vehicle they feel comfortable with, they may choose, if they have a truck, along a roadway, to go over a curb to make sure they're out of the way. But generally, when you see people getting out of the way for emergency vehicles, they're not darting over curbs and exiting the pavement. But that was kind of what the impression I got from Mr. Trinkets was, well, that's what's going to be required. They have to do what they have to do to get out of the way. My concern is that, what are the risks involved in that? Because we have, as we mentioned, some retaining walls that if you go over the curb, you're going to be within feet of the retaining wall. It has a chain link fence on top of it, but not guide rail. So I guess that's sort of like a follow-up to the last meeting, some comments that I had based on the commentary from Mr. Trinkus.
Thank you, Todd. All right, if I may, I'll move on to Tom Galliford. And Tom, I think the bottom line here is this driveway safe? And what standards do you use to determine your opinion?
Sure. So the Connecticut Fire Code, just recently in the last probably 5 or 6 years, the state has adopted some standards of the International Fire Code and some NFPA standards that finally allow us to, have some say, whereas before it was just kind of, based on our feelings of things. So the 20 foot is a minimum width. And again, it's the code states it's a minimum. It's not the maximum that it has to be. So there's nothing that says it cannot be wider than 20 feet. And they leave that up to a little bit of interpretation for scenarios like this, where a 20-foot fire access roadway, driveway, whatever you want to call it, right? In the code, we kind of look at that term as a fire access road. It could be a driveway, a road, it's varying things. So like I mentioned and stated last time, if this was a true fire access road that was only for fire apparatus as kind of a secondary means to get to the property, would probably be okay. To me, and in my experience, this is not just a driveway like you would have to a single family home or maybe to 2 houses in a rear lot or something. This is, several units, 9 units in a development, in a small footprint on the top of a hill. And in my opinion, it would be very difficult to get fire apparatus to safely travel up that road. The idea of fire apparatus having to pull over, yes, that is the law. But again, You know, this is a very narrow driveway. It's steep. It has a lot of sharp corners, as Todd has shown us there on the fire apparatus turning plans, and even, you know, for smaller apparatus rather than the aerial tower. It's a very, in my opinion, very difficult driveway to access. You know, I've been in the fire service 32 years. I've driven a lot of different fire trucks. I've had people not pull over for me. I've driven trucks barely almost off the road because people don't comply with the rule of pulling over for fire apparatus. So, you know, that doesn't really go too far. You know, it's a tight road to be traveling up for fire apparatus. You know, we can look at other developments before these requirements were in place. Places, you know, people brought up Kingswood condos. Yeah, you know, if I was the fire marshal when that was being developed, we would have the same concerns. We actually had a fire there during a snowstorm. We burnt, the guardhouse caught on fire, and that was very difficult to get fire apparatus up that road for a guardhouse. It was an unoccupied building. It wasn't a building with people in it. So, you know, these are real case scenarios that can happen. And unfortunately, we have to plan for the worst and hope for the best when it comes to fire safety and you know, having access for fires. You know, I can't say in 5 years there'll be a fire on the property or not, or in 30 years, but you know, we have to design it and have it built to the safest standard possible for that. So, you know, Todd brings up a lot of good points, and I would have to concur with him on all of them as far as the turning radiuses and the steep grades there and whatnot for that.
Tom, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What, based on the new information of the new design and the driveway grades on that inside corner, I mean, and there was some conversation last hearing about this, whether or not a larger cistern would be required or not. And I think Mr. Trinket said that he doesn't need to provide it. And it's like they only need to provide 10,000 gallons. But I mean, if say 10,000 gallons was the number and the volume, and I mean, you'd, you know, potentially still need to shuttle water. So I mean, and having, you know, trucks, you know, tanker trucks going up and down, you know, you certainly would probably, you know, and obviously eagerly going up and down, you know, to, you know, be able to be expeditious about getting water. Would there be a concern about the grades, you know, that exceed the 12%? I know you've talked 10% being the max before, because based on the roadway standards, but in light of the grades that I presented that are the grades shown now, what are your thoughts on that?
Right. So that corner there, right? So we took one problem and, you know, we kind of made another problem. We have a little bit wider of a turn there. But as you pointed out, the grades on that one inside corner are now well above 12%. So yeah, that's an issue. So, right, you make up a good point about shuttling water. Obviously, there's no hydrants. You know, pretty much every other multifamily development that we have in town, this is kind of a one-off. They've all been in areas where we have city water or Aquarian water in Stony Hill, things like that, where we have a reliable, you know, I want to say continuous supply of water. Here we're in an area where there's no hydrants. The closest hydrant's over 2 miles away at the intersection of 302 and Wolf Pits. So having the ability to have enough water to fight a fire there, yeah, it would be very important as well. And yeah, obviously a tanker shuttle operation involves just that, is taking, you know, 12-wheel fire apparatus with 2,000 or 3,000 gallons of water in each truck and having to shuttle it, you know, once that 10,000 gallon tank is used, you know, driving the apparatus up and down that hill, right? And a very good chance of them passing each other on that driveway to access the site, dump the water, and then, you know, go back down and drive 2 miles away to get the water. Yeah, so that, you know, that adds to that issue of it.
Tom, in regards to that, going back to the, you were talking about the 10,000 gallon tank. At the last hearing, it sounded more like the applicant was stating the reason for the tank is for insurance purposes. Can you clarify that a little bit, just to go piggyback on what you were just discussing as far as safety?
Yeah, sure. So yes, so it does help with the insurance, and it's kind of, I think, on the town's due diligence to make sure that we provide for those items. There are some sections in the zoning and reg that talk about providing adequate firefighting water supply. They don't tell us what that is, how much it is, what the tank number is. 10,000 gallons has always been kind of a standard that the town has used. However, if you look at some other recent subdivisions that have been done with the extension of Star Lane and Gabriella Court, there's actually 3 water tanks up there that equal 40,000 gallons total. Vale Road, they added about 8 or 9 homes to Vale Road. There is a hydrant within 1,000 feet of that property, but when that was proposed several years ago, in consultation with the fire department, they thought it was important to have additional water supply for those buildings there, as well as for the neighborhood. So 2 10,000 gallons. So there's 20,000 gallons of water, underground water tanks for those new homes on Vale Road as well. Jacobs Lane has 4 10,000 gallon underground water tanks. Again, they're 10,000 gallons, but they're spread out, throughout the neighborhood or throughout the development to get above that threshold. Mr. Trinka says, the ISO says 500 gallons for 1 hour. Well, that equals that 30,000 gallon number. So that 30,000 gallon number is not just a number in the air to say, hey, we want a bigger tank. It's based off of a lot of different standards, NFPA, ISO. There's a lot of different professional organizations in the fire service out there that kind of help us guide us towards, water supply and how much water we would need. So having that 30,000 gallon tank would really help us not have to worry about that tanker shuttle operation and do that operation of providing water up and down the street and driving tanker trucks up and down the street. And I don't think it's, to me, we're going to put a tank in the ground, 10, 20 or 30,000 gallon tank. It's just taking up a little square footage underground. I don't really see that there's an issue as far as being able to provide a larger size tank for that development up there. Like I said, this is kind of a one-off. It's a little bit different development than we've dealt with in the past in town, where most multi-family housing developments are within city water or the Aquarium water system in Stony Hill as well. So it requires a little bit more thought, a little bit more safety measures. This isn't a 100-foot driveway that's going to 9 units. This is an 800, 900-foot long driveway. It's a very long driveway on a substantial grade, to allow for fire apparatus, ambulances, etc., to be able to access it. We look at these things, and it's one of those things where we look at it. We may not have a lot of regulations and codes that we can sink our teeth into, but when you look at this and you say, well, that's not going to be good. That's not, this is going to maybe cause a problem for the residents living there, and it may be difficult to get apparatus there. And these are 2-unit and 3-unit homes. So if we were to have a fire on one, we're risking another unit directly attached to it, or a 3rd unit attached to it. So it has a little bit more of a safety factor to it.
Can I ask a question, Pat?
Yes, of course.
I don't mean to jump in, but because the fire marshal's talking. Thomas, if there was a 2,500 square foot house and fully involved, how much water does it take to put the, I know you don't know, but what does it take? Does it take 50,000 gallons?
Well,
to
yeah.
put the
So,
average house?
there are formulas, and again, they're formulas and they may not be exact science, but, that's around, and that's kind of what we base it off of. That's a pretty average size in Bethel. When you do the math, it's like, if it was fully involved, you need 900 gallons per minute to extinguish a fire.
Wow.
And again, is it going to be 5 minutes to
but
put it out?
so at the end of the night, you say, wow, that was a lot. Yeah.
Right. And
I'm
so
sorry,
that's permit,
my
and then you have
internet's
to have
going
it.
in and out, but so at the,
I'm
I have
sorry,
a
go ahead,
question,
John.
Tommy, too. Tommy, if you go with the 10,000 gallon, that doesn't give you very much time to get the tankers going. once.
No, not at all. I mean, you know,
And
prime
that-
example, there was a fire recent.
Gallon would be buying you time to, once you get there, determine how the fire is going. Gives you 30,000 gallons, probably gives you time to get, you know, a couple other tankers in there to help you out.
Oh, absolutely. We would call mutual aid. We only have 2 tankers in town that have 2,000 gallons each. So we would have to call for mutual aid from other towns, and it takes a time. You know, there's a time delay to get that process rolling and get those apparatus there and set up the portable pond and start the tanker operation.
I mean, I've watched one of those down in Clark Park when you had a demonstration down there years ago, and it's a very intense operation.
Oh, absolutely. It's very manpower intensive and coordinating it. I mean, there was a recent fire in Newtown, in the Taunton Lake area where there's no hydrants in the area. It was like a 3,000 square foot home, and using the local tankers that they had, they ran out of water and had to use a tanker shuttle and use an underground cistern. And then they ended up using an actual fire hydrant, you know, well, 3 or 4 miles away. And by that time it was an hour and a half into the fire, and the home ended up being a complete loss. So these things do happen. So we're just trying to help prevent that from happening.
I watched a fire down in Greenwich where the neighbor wouldn't let the fireman pump his pond out, and the house burned to the ground because they didn't have any water there. That's how you fight fires, is with water.
But that guy was selfish.
Okay.
So.
Moving on, Laura, I have a couple questions for you. I just wanted to make sure that I understand the water well system, and is it under state jurisdiction? Is that correct?
State Health Department will regulate the water.
Laura, you're gonna have to talk just a little louder if you can.
The state of Connecticut will regulate that water system in conjunction with me. They will be the primary regulator, but there will be issues that will be done in conjunction with the local director of health.
Okay, and am I correct? We don't have the details?
We don't have the details on the components that will be used, even if sometimes you're shown for separation distances, where certain components will be away from septic system components.
Okay.
And we don't have that right now.
Okay, so then this does require a higher review and approval?
Yes, it will be the state health department that will review and approve the water system. They will ask us, the local health department, to join them for the site assessments, and they will let us in on the reviews. But legally, they will be the one that will approve it and will put the whatever conditions on it.
Okay, so then based on what you said, your department does not have jurisdiction over the wells from what I'm reading, is that correct?
Well, the public health laws are interesting. If there are certain issues that have to do with protection of local public health, then some of the laws put the director of health right smack in the middle of it. So like the water reports for the water will come to me, or a local health director. And if there are issues of public health concern of the town of Bethel, then it will involve the town of Bethel and myself. But they are the primary regulator of a public water system.
Okay, thank you.
In regards to that, earlier you had asked me how this all, how we got to where we are now, almost 6 months down the road. Now we're dealing with a private water company versus wells and such. And I went back to the record, and I just wanted to mention, I did find back in June 30th, 2020, Laura did say that she felt the need to seek comments from the state of Connecticut Public Health Department to ensure that the applicable private well water supply requirements are addressed, including locations, construction, yield, quality standards, and code. And on July 16th, you asked me when the applicant made his first response in regards to that. In regards to his response was all 4 proposed wells are located in the general vicinity of the residential buildings and fully comply with required setbacks to footage sewage. The development is not under the jurisdiction of either the State of Connecticut Department of Health or the Connecticut DEEP, and review and approval jurisdiction rests solely with the Bethel Health Department. So basically what we're saying now almost 6 months later is that there will be a state health department review involved with this. And usually when these items do come up, they come up in the beginning of the process in order to do testing and realization of how many wells are needed or what the water yield is there in order to determine the number of units that you could put on a site. Am I correct, Laura?
Well, it's,
To a degree.
it's
I mean, I'm
too
just trying to deal with it from a planning point of view, and I think
Right.
that's Pat's concern.
You really should be able to see that at least one design will meet the regulations and be suitable and acceptable. And
Okay.
right now, you don't have enough detail. The state did tell us, and I don't want to tell you, bring too much to the table on this.
No.
The state said that it may be 2 wells, it may be 4 wells, but that you will need the separation distances from the water supply components to sewage disposal components, to catch basins, to stormwater management. And those would be considered basic elements that would be acceptable.
Hey, Beth.
Yeah.
Beth,
Yes.
first of all, it says Deanne's iPad entered the waiting room. Not sure who that is. If you wanted to, did that come up on your screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
I see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then I just kind of wanted to follow up with that a little bit as well regarding the stormwater pocket pond. I think everybody's kind of heard me say over and over again, it's kind of hasn't really reached a conclusion, at least in my mind, is the pocket pond. And I know the neighbor is very concerned about the pocket pond and his well in the proximity to that pocket pond. I mean, the stormwater pocket pond is, a treatment device, and with that means that there's going to be pollutants being discharged into it from stormwater. It is designed generally in its hydraulics and its shape and form consistent with the deep stormwater quality manual. However, the manual, and what may have not been clear through the things, is the manual does not specifically address when you encounter bedrock in the midst of a pocket pond, because you're not really supposed to design a pocket pond in bedrock. I mean, because you're assuming that the groundwater table is above bedrock that you're intercepting. We've kind of gone. I've been involved with review of this project through inland wetlands for a long time now. This was one outstanding item that I did have, even when they went into their final deliberations, and they chose not to pursue it further. However, I never concluded that I was satisfied with the fact that now with this basin being where it is, and it's acknowledged through some tests that were done, that most likely this basin will be excavated not just a little bit into rock, but significantly into rock, like say 10 feet. It's questionable whether there will be adequate protection of the bedrock from these pollutants that could potentially seep into the bedrock. As Laura was saying, and as everybody acknowledges, there's a lot of protections that come into play, say with even septic systems. And there's not a lot of difference between treatment systems for, say, sewage water or stormwater. I mean, anything that puts water into the ground, it's just basically putting it through a soil filtration system. And there's different, obviously, microorganisms and different physics that takes place that facilitates the treatment processes. However, for instance, with septic system, there was a lot of discussion at the public hearing about having 4 feet of soil over bedrock underneath the septic system. And that is to protect the bedrock from the effluent that's being from the septic system before it had it, and so that it, 4 feet of soil, it has 4 feet of soil to travel through and be renovated to, you know, adequate state before there's potentially bedrock fracs and could potentially enter the rock and potentially get into the aquifer. And that's why we have the separations that we do to wells and the like, is because it's, you can't deny that there could be some impact or impacts from anything that infiltrates water into the ground. Now there's, Mr. Trinkus has debated whether the pocket pond is infiltrating water into the ground. And my response has been, this isn't necessarily going to be a static environment. This pocket pond could dry out. We had a drought this past year. It could dry out. And then when water comes back into it, it could potentially infiltrate before the water table rises to a point where water is static again at a certain level. So the water table could be drawn down so much that if water comes in from the road surfaces and everything, it's going to want to go into the ground before it comes out of the pocket pond. And then we've talked about, you know, when the level of water rises up, if you have bedrock surrounding it, it could potentially seep into the sides as under a storm event when the actual water table rises, or the water level in the pond rises. Now, Mr. Trinkus has mentioned that he's going to put some sort of topsoil-y clay material in there to address this. But in my opinion, unless that is, you know, done adequately, there is potential for this, and it's going to last, you know, be a long time, and it's done, it's stabilized and the like, that there could be potential for infiltration of the water, of pollutants into the rock. I've tried to dig further into this, but every time I do, kind of push back or brush back about these other sort of simplistic solutions. But I think it's hard to visualize what this is going to be because everybody just sees lines on a drawing. And looking at it, it's going to be a lot of rock being excavated out of there, and potentially creating a situation where water can pass into the rock, just by nature of the pond itself.
Thank you. Beth, I have a question for you. We received the email from Matthew Pollock from the Department of Public Health to Laura. Can Laura discuss this letter where he discusses page 35 of the technical standards?
I think that leads into a discussion dealing with septics, and I know Brian Baker is also here, and maybe that would be a good segue into that, Laura.
Pulled Matt's email up, but basically, Pat, the state health department was asked by Mr. Trinkus if he has to have suitable soils in the primary and reserve areas for the septic areas, and the state health department said yes. And you have that in my technical document to you, and you Brian, he's here, he could jump on, I know he's here somewhere. His letter to you is also saying that we concur that you have to have suitable soils in the primary and reserve. There is not suitable soils in building A's reserve area. There's not suitable soils with a swale through it for building C reserve area. And the technical standards of the Public Health Code tell the Director of Health, do not advise for the creation of a project where there's not suitable soils.
Thank you, Laura. All right, Brian. Regarding the proposed septic system and your final review letter, could you please review in layman's terms how you came to your conclusion excuse me, came to your concluding paragraphs in the memo of October 16th?
Sure. So there's really two main things that are going on with the regards to the septic systems. Number one, there is insufficient data in areas for the septic systems. And in even the test pits that were done, the test pit logs are different from what Laura has versus what Steve has in his log. So there's inconsistency, and there's not enough test pits to prove out that there is adequate soil based upon the public health code for systems, the primary systems A, and then the primary and reserve for B, C, and D. So there's not adequate soil data for that, number one. And number two, in the reserve system for system A, the test holes that Mr. Trinkus provided himself and the logs did not provide 4 feet of suitable soil, which is required in the health code. Therefore, he does not have a suitable reserve area for septic system A. He argued that he could go with the criteria of quote unquote potentially suitable soil, which is only 2 feet of native material. That is only qualifies for a single family residential development, which this is not. So, and that was the email from Matt Pollock, confirmed our interpretation of the regulations that the system A does not have an adequate septic system. And just if I got to chime in, I know there was discussion about at the previous meeting, a request of the applicant to, well, we'll make that a condition of approval. In my opinion, trying to prove out or say that, oh, you know, as a condition of approval, prove that you have adequate soils on the site is not a condition of approval. That's a basic criteria that has to be met in order to have a design approved that meets public health and safety. Something small like add an additional row of silt fence, show a dumpster pad, you know, other things that you know can be accomplished, in my opinion, would be reasonable conditions of an approval, not prove to us that there's adequate soils on the site, which they have not.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
Beth, is there anything you want to add before I move on to commission member questions?
Just one, Pat, Chuck Andrus, one
Yes,
follow-up question to Brian. Brian, what are the, I think you mentioned this letter, but what are the public safety concerns associated with a lack of or lack of soil suitability of where it hasn't been shown?
So what you have to have to have suitable soils for septic in the state of Connecticut based on the health code is you have to have 18 inches of soil that are dry above groundwater and 48 inches of soil overall that are above ledge. And that's to provide for adequate treatment of septic effluent as it flows through the soil and gets filtered. Number one, and number two, that you know down gradient that it's not going to pop out of the ground hydraulically, and then you have untreated effluent on the surface, which is a public health hazard. So those are the two most important things. Number one, separation to groundwater, which in order to make sure you're not polluting the groundwater, which they haven't proven because, as I mentioned before, there was a test hole that Laura had recorded 8 inches to groundwater in, and Mr. Trinkus made no mention of groundwater in that same test hole. So serious inconsistencies there. You need 18 inches to groundwater to provide separation and treatment to make sure you're not polluting the groundwater, which they need more test data to prove that, and or groundwater monitoring through the spring to determine where that groundwater level is. And number two, adequate separation to ledge so that you don't have effluent breaking out of the ground that's not treated and then becomes, you have basically septic effluent at the surface of the ground, which is obviously a public health hazard.
Anything else, Chuck? Oh, you're muted.
No, nothing at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Beth, anything else you want to add before I move to commission members?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, thank you. All right, Kitty, if I may, I'll start with you.
I can't think of any question. I think Todd and Brian and Laura and Tom have pretty much answered every question I could possibly have. And I thank you very much for all your information. It's really been enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you, Kitty. John? You're muted, John. John, you're muted.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Good for
Get
you.
off my back, Pat. Thank you, guys. So, you know, it all comes down to, if you have a piece of property, you don't build a house unless you have what? You got to have water, and you got to have septic or sewer. And it sounds like, you know, our job as commissioners is to listen to testimony on both sides and decide what's more believable. I have a real hard time when the applicant's engineer says, well, we just disagree and it is what it is. We're not going to change it. So, you know, I have a real hard time believing the applicant's engineer, and certainly believe Todd and Brian, and we got to have septic, and we can't have groundwater being polluted with septic that's not, you know, going into the ground. So that's where I'd like to start.
Thank you, John.
That's great.
Penny?
Wow, all of this information, it's really been, it's just remarkable. Thank you, everybody. I think between the safety issue of that driveway, a driveway, we'll call it a driveway, and the water/septic, I have a huge problem with this whole thing. And not to say that I trust one set of statistics over the other, but I happen to trust one set of statistics over the other. So that's pretty much where I am.
Thank you, Penny. Ken?
I just had a general question about, I thought a lot of this should have been resolved during inland wetlands. Is that correct?
Water?
No, wetlands just deals with wetlands, Ken.
Yeah, okay.
Our board is the one that deals with all the other issues. The wetlands just was concerned with what was activity was going on associated with the wetlands. Their charge is totally different from yours.
Okay. I had a question for Todd Ritchie.
Sure.
Go ahead.
If you were to take the plans that exist now, was that the only place that those guys could have put a driveway or road in? I mean, could they have done it any other way, or is that the only one they felt that could possibly work?
I mean, that's a good question. I think if you go back, I don't have the plan handy, but there was, when this lot was subdivided, there was, and it had a single family home shown under the subdivision. It did have a driveway. It was, I believe, but it didn't go as far up the hill. So it went to an intermediate area on the north side, sort of northeast, and it kind of went diagonal. So maybe a little bit, I think it entered close to where it is now, and it, instead of kind of serpentining up the hill because of as much length and maximum slope that's needed to get the full 900 or whatever feet that it is now, they were able to, the designer at the time was able to accomplish it sort of like diagonal across the site. And that was certainly I think it was probably for a single family home, a 12 or 16 foot wide driveway. So, not 20. And it was more sort of like built into the hillside, shall we say. But I mean, you don't have a lot of options here. You really don't. It's not an easy site. I mean, that's acknowledged by everybody. Originally, the stormwater basin was proposed on the north side, like right up against the wetlands. And, part of the issue with that was that they felt the wetlands agency, and I think that's the only thing they resolved at one time, and one of their decisions was that they felt that the basin itself, because it was being excavated up gradient of the wetlands, that it would cut off the groundwater flow to the wetlands. And the wetlands were groundwater fed wetlands. So to avoid that, because there would, you obviously need a stormwater basin at the, at the bottom of this hill.
Right.
They moved it to the other side and then sort of shuffled things around a little bit. But other than that, I mean, there's really
So
really
realistically, the only thing that would have worked here might have been one house.
I mean, realistically, I think you're talking about, one house, maybe on a different elevation, on a slightly different portion of the site. Obviously they're trying to take advantage of as much, flattened area with real estate that's usable and developable, to situate all of those units. So I think I think when it comes down to it, I think everybody would agree right now, that one single family home would probably be quite workable there.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anything else, Ken?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Bob Legnard.
Couple of things. I still have a problem with the driveway being safe. I have a problem with the water tank not being 30,000 gallons. And I have a problem with the lack of a workable septic plan, which I think needs to be in place before we could ever approve this. The driveway is probably one of the, I spend more of my life in driveways than the average person because I worked 30 years for UPS. And this would be a very difficult driveway for any vehicle to get up and down other than a single family, home up at the top, where you had the people who were going in and out, in their own personal vehicles. And then you would still have this driveway would be a problem if that single family house caught fire. But to put more than that up there and to challenge the safetiness of that driveway, I would have a problem approving that as a safe driveway and a safe place to build this number of units. So that said, I'll listen to the rest of the people still. And again, I appreciate the expertise of all the people who have, made comments on this project. And we're not all knowledgeable in some of this stuff. We deal with it as best we can, and we don't have the knowledge to deal with it. We ask the experts, and the experts have spoken, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Rich.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the things that everybody else said, and I'll double down on what I said in my comment on the other development because I mixed the two up, but this is also way out of character and a million miles from everything. But the big takeaway here, and again, I'll double down on what Bob said. I appreciate the input from the trade professionals on the call because what stands out is I think at best we have Tom saying that while the 10,000 gallons may check the box, so to speak, right? So it's compliant. It doesn't mean it's secure, right? That's the world I live in, which is a pretty big risk to take as a developer, right? And I think that feeds right into public safety, right? If you only have 10,000 gallons of water, you're far from everything. I mean, that's a tough pill to swallow. So and that's the best case scenario, right? So input from Tom is the best case scenario. I think what we heard from Lauren, from Brian, about the lack of consistency in what was found in the test pits, the lack of information around septic efficacy is it's an environmental health and safety issue to me. I don't know how else to say it. I could say it a couple different ways, but I think, again, to Bob's point, these are the experts that we rely on, and they've been very clear in what they've found and seen on this site. So
Anything else, Rich?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you. I have to agree with what everybody is saying here. When I look at our subject matter experts, they've been consistent through this entire application. The information that we're receiving never changes. Although it may be in direct conflict with what the applicant is saying, our SMEs never swayed away from all of the information they've been giving us. And I think some of them are serious health and safety issues. So having said that, is there anyone that would like to make any other comments before I ask something of you? All right.
I'd like to say something more.
Yes.
I think, there was some question about, what would happen to the fellow's well next door, I think O'Mara.
All right, Mara.
And if it's destroyed or rendered useless through blasting, that's one thing. If it's rendered useless through pollution, that's a far more serious problem.
Yes.
And I think the lack of good septic up the hill from that well is a major problem. We can't, guarantee that it's not going to happen. Between the pocket pond, between the septics, between the roadway, we don't have the ability to say that's all going to come out right. And it's all going to come out okay for Mr. O'Mara. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. All right. What I would like to do, based on what we're hearing, based on what our subject matter experts are saying, I would like to take a consensus to deny this application. And if I may have a show of hands for those who agree.
Kitty Grant, yes. I agree.
And state their names, Pat.
All right. Bob Legnard, Pat Rist, Kenny Parsons, Penny Kessler, Rich Tibbetts, John Lennon.
Kitty
I think
Grant.
I got you all. All right. So that consensus is for Beth and Chuck.
Yes, Pat, if I could just mention, I mentioned this in the other hearing, but again, this is an 830G application. Under 830G, we have in the event of an appeal, the commission would have the burden to show that the decision is necessary to protect substantial public interest in health, safety, or other matters which the commission may legally consider, that such public interests clearly outweigh the need for affordable housing, and that such public interest cannot be protected by reasonable changes to the affordable housing development. And so that's what we'll be addressing in the resolution. I know that there was discussion on the other public hearing about, and there's stuff in the record about what the town has done for affordable housing and about how the projects, including for this applicant, have been approved. And so we would be including that. I just don't want to make it suggest, because if this to be appealed, we wouldn't have the record for the other one, but some of those items I understand will be addressing in the resolution, and I understand that you would like us to, based on the discussion.
Yes. All right. That concludes our meeting.
No, excuse me, Pat,
sorry.
it doesn't. I just want to bring something up. It came to my attention when we were having our discussions. As far as this portion of the meeting dealing with Shelley Road, it's ended. We do not need our experts anymore. If they want to leave, we want to thank you very much for your participation.
Yes, thank you all.
Thanks.
We have to go back to Good Hill Road. In regards to Good Hill Road, it was brought to my attention. I don't know when we did not have the proper recording being done, but at some from the beginning to some point, the recording wasn't taking into effect. I apologize for that. So I think, Chuck, I think we all need your help and guidance to help us along to figure out where we go from here.
Sure. In the event of an appeal, there will be a transcript of the proceedings. And unfortunately, it appears like we have no record of what was said at the prior one. So I think we can try to summarize that. Perhaps we have Beth, we can have I don't know how long the discussion was. Was it half hour or 45 minutes?
I want to say it was a half an hour to 40 minutes.
Beth,
Okay.
it's Tom.
Yes, Tom.
So it was about 7:10 was when the recording started.
Oh, it was?
It was only 10 minutes, yeah.
We only lost 10 minutes?
Correct.
I was watching it. It recorded most of it.
Oh,
Yes.
I don't think we really got anything accomplished in the first 5 minutes.
Can you see me, Thomas?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, that's why I texted you. I texted you at 10 after 7 and I said it's not recording and I didn't get a reply. So a minute later I said I hit the record button. So it was 7:10 when I hit the record button, according to my text to you.
You can
I just want you
easily
to know.
do forensics on it. Yeah. Anybody that has McCollum's on, right? Yeah. Somewhere.
Yes,
Dave,
I'm here.
Dave can look into it.
Could someone bring a bottle of wine over to Beth, please? Or
okay.
some chocolate chip cookies. Either one would work.
Or both.
Or both.
You have made my day. You have made my week. You've made my life.
Whoa.
Okay.
I think she loves you.
Take a bottle of wine next door
Coffee
to
with
Tom.
just cream.
Chuck, I think missing the first 10 minutes is not overly concerning at this point.
Right. I agree.
You may
Yeah,
want to make a record of the fact that everyone, I think the one thing you might have missed is that there was a quorum. We just
Correct.
Oh, yeah, we talked about everybody else who was here.
Yes.
Yeah, because I was late.
You're positive, Tom, 7:10?
Yeah, according to my text to you, because I texted you and I said it's not recording.
And it's
Okay.
recording now.
Okay.
And I hit record at 7:10.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
wow. Okay.
Oh,
What about a next meeting date? Do you plan to discuss that? It's
You have it ready for tomorrow night?
I'm totally lost. You guys got to figure this one out, okay? I'm still in recovery here.
we only have one meeting on December 8th for the rest of the year.
Right. Beth, I can step in and help with things.
Please do.
Okay. So, commissioners, we have our next regular meeting tomorrow night, the 24th.
Right.
And then our last meeting for this year is on December 8th, as Kitty mentioned. Okay. So that would mean that I don't know when we have our next regular meeting scheduled for January, but apart from what business we take care of on the 8th, we would have to wait until then for anything else to occur.
Is there a time limit, Chuck?
I think Beth had calculated the 65 days for Goodrich to expire on Christmas.
So it's January 12th is our first meeting in January.
That's correct.
So we'll
Good Hill
shoot for the 8th.
expires then.
I just wouldn't want it to be next week because this week's a short week, but it would give us next week.
No, it's too short. December 1st is too short.
Yeah,
just
no,
too short.
absolutely December 1st, but I'm thinking December 8th is your next regular meeting. Have this
Yes.
on your agenda for you.
Right.
What
I
else do
think-
you have on for the 8th?
Okay, I'm getting back to form here. You will probably have a continuation of Greenwood Avenue.
Probably.
That, just a reminder, there are revised drawings in the drive. So we will be going, presentations for the most part will be over with for Greenwood Avenue. It'll just be the back and forth between our experts and the applicant. If you find that the new concept that they've proposed is acceptable. So you will have a public hearing that night. Because it's an open application in the COVID provisions and everything, you can also continue that hearing till January. They've had a month to work on that application and you're just getting all your documents in today. So there's more turnaround time associated with that.
Is this one of the old doctor's office?
Yes.
Yes.
Open testis.
Yep.
So I think that we could probably limit the time period that goes for on the 8th to an hour. And then the only other thing that you have on the docket at this point would be discussion of these two applications.
Okay.
We would
Alright.
try to get you draft resolutions before then, at least
Yes.
24 hours before then, so you can call us with comments or something, so we can come in with some revisions.
Thank you. All right. You're all set now, Beth?
I'm beside myself.
Okay, hang on.
Sounds good.
Nancy, I got you, Nancy. Hang on.
You're muted.
Who's muted?
David, can you unmute her?
Yes,
I got
was
her.
muted the whole time. It was so frustrating. I couldn't even say, oomph.
David, I'm not touching any more buttons tonight. I'm done.
Okay.
Okay, are we ready to have someone make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Say first.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Happy Thanksgiving.